Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and public education in the South. And we have with us to talk about the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and public education in the South, Professor KSanford, a professor in the Department of Sociology at Tennessee State University. And of course, Dr. Sanford, let me welcome you to the show this morning.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you so much for inviting me.
And to tell you how delighted we are to have you with us, Dr. Sanford. I'm reminded that not long ago you first made your appearance on this show, and you talked about higher education in the 21st century, and of course we've received so many compliments in reference to that particular show. But what we'd like to do today, Dr. Sanford, is to talk about the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and to talk about how that act had some impact upon public education in the South. But before we do that, let's have you to give our audience some information about your background, your education, and some of the things that eventually led you to Tennessee State University, because I'm sure that some of them probably did not have an opportunity to see the last show that you did with us. So give us that information, and then we'll be able to talk about the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and public education in the South.
Well, certainly, and I would first like to thank you so much for inviting me this morning, as well as having such a profound show that really offers a different perspective. Again, I am KSanford, and I presently am associate professor in the Department of Sociology at Tennessee State University. My background is very varied, but I've been in education my entire life. I received my PhD from Howard University in Washington, D.C., as well as my master's degree from North Carolina Central University in Durham, North Carolina. I also received a postdoc degree at the Pennsylvania State University in State College, Pennsylvania. I'm also very proud of a number of other types of work opportunities I've had in addition to being in education. One with the national headquarters of the American Red Cross in Washington, D.C., working with HIV/AIDS education, the American Association of Retired Persons, doing victims assistance programs in crime, as well as the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. We also had a victim assistance program.
And so you've been involved in a whole variety of activities during your career, Dr. Sanford. What we'd like to do is to look at the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Dr. Sanford, as we indicated earlier, and to have you to give us some preliminary statements in reference to where that Act of 1964 stands in reference to the history of the African American in this country.
Yes. Well, it's a very important act. As you may very well know and have already stated, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was implemented at that particular time period because of the egregious nature of our society, the prejudice, discrimination that had historically been here in America. It was put forth to try to give some really fair accommodations, if you will, to public facilities and education and the job force and all of the different components of the society in which we live in. And I'd be remiss not to take us back a little bit and to frame this act of 1964, because it's, as you've stated, it's about 40 years ago. But for 244 years there was enslavement here in America, and that was one of the worst types of peculiar institutions, as Dr. Kenneth Stamp would mention, that the history of the world has ever noticed. Of course, there's always been slavery in antiquity, but this one was somewhat peculiar. All the literature indicates that. And then 81 years of Jim Crow laws that came after that. You're talking about 1861 to 1865 with the Civil Rights, with the Civil War, I'm sorry. And then during that Civil War, coming out of that with the Reconstruction from around 1866 to 1870, came the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, the 14th Amendment, and the 15th Amendment. Some of my viewers might not realize or remember, the 13th Amendment actually freed Africans. 14th Amendment gave citizenship rights, and the 15th Amendment gave the right to vote. So an excellent question would be, why are we talking about the Civil Rights Act of 1964?
Yeah, good, very good. And of course, Dr. Sanford, we're getting ready, and we'll talk about that when we come back during this second segment, because we're getting ready for the first commercial break.
Okay.
But I think that what you've done here, you've laid a very fertile foundation to talk about this Act of 1964, because the question, as you indicated, is almost natural. That is, if the 13th Amendment was freed Africans and the 14th Amendment gave them, quote, civil rights, then why another right? And that will allow you, I think, to come back to talk about some of the activities in that particular period that kept Africans from enjoying all of the rights that they were accorded in the Civil Rights Act of 1866, I think that's. And of course, we're making preparations for our first commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. The topic is the Civil Rights